3 individuals in the Bible who never died. Number 1, Elijah. During one of Israel's worst periods, God called Elijah. At that time, Israel had one of the worst kings, and his name was Ahab. Elijah was one of Israel's greatest prophets and a Tishbite from Gilead in the region of Transjordan. The Book of Kings covers more of his life than most of the kings themselves, despite there not being a book written in his honor. His encounter with the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel made him very famous. King Ahab incorporated idealism into a system that should be led by God's agenda, as the Israelites were his people. Israel suffered as a result of a bad government, but Elijah, on the other hand, represented a different kind of dominion. He had no connections to the political establishment or the royal family. He had the ability to speak the truth to earthly power without being co-opted or corrupted. Elijah was a brave person who spoke the truth, no matter who was in charge. He represented a completely different kingdom with a very different purpose. Elijah seemed to have reached the peak of life's adventures, heroically almost unbelievable, yet humble at heart. But he was about to surpass them all. He was about to avoid death. Elijah's deathless departure puts him in the rare category of departures without death. Although we are never told when or how God did this, it is clear from the context that he informed Elijah of his imminent departure. God revealed this to the sons of the prophets, as well as to Elisha, the close friend of the old prophet and divinely chosen successor, as we will see. 2 Kings 2 verses 1-12. When the Lord was about to take Elijah to the heavens in a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way to Gilgal. We reach the last day of Elijah on earth when he will be lifted up in a whirlwind. The Hebrew here can also be translated as a blast in a windy moment. In a sweeping motion, Elijah would be taken away, and at that moment he would vanish from this land into the presence of God. Now, God not only told Elijah that this would happen and how it would happen, but he also told him where it would happen. This explains why we see Elijah moving quickly toward the Jordan. As you read the narrative, imagine the scene unfolding. 2 Kings 2 verses 2-6. And Elijah said to Elisha, "Please stay here, for the Lord has sent me to Bethel." But Elisha replied, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So they went down to Bethel. Now the sons of the prophets who were in Bethel came out to Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that the Lord will take away your master today?" He answered, "Yes, I know. Keep silent about it." Elijah said to him, "Elisha, please stay here, for the Lord has sent me to Jericho." But he said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So they went to Jericho. The sons of the prophets who were in Jericho approached Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that the Lord will take away your master today?" And he answered, "Yes, I know. Keep silent about it." Elijah said to him, "Please stay here, for the Lord has sent me to the Jordan." But he said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So the two of them went on. The sons of the prophets asked the same question to Elisha both in Bethel and Jericho. "Do you know that the Lord will take away your master from over you today?" Elisha responded in the same way on both occasions. "Yes, I know. Now please be silent." Gilgal was the starting point. According to Joshua 4, Gilgal was the campsite of the children of Israel after crossing the Jordan into Canaan. If you remember your biblical history, this was the point where they were still safe, just before they began their invasion into enemy territory. Gilgal was the starting point for Elijah's final journey. Elijah's next stop was Bethel, a place of prayer. Bethel means house of God. Finally, Elijah went to the Jordan, which was a place of death, not just physical death, but also the death of one's own life. Elisha said to Elijah upon reaching the Jordan, his final earthly destination, "As the Lord lives, I will not leave you." Elijah had been trying to distance himself from Elisha since Gilgal. I believe he wasn't trying to get rid of Elisha as much as he was testing his next companion, his future divinely chosen successor. When the two men stood by the Jordan, the scene changed abruptly. Now comes the miraculous event. 2 Kings 2, verses 7 to 10, 50 men from the sons of the prophets also went and stood at a distance while the two of them stood by the Jordan. Elijah took his cloak, rolled it up, and struck the waters, which parted to one side and to the other, so that the two of them crossed on dry ground. And when they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, "Ask what I shall do for you before I am taken from you." And Elisha said, "Please, let there be a double portion of your spirit on me." Elijah replied, "You have asked for a hard thing. Nevertheless, if you see me as I am being taken from you, it shall be so for you. But if not, it shall not be so." This is similar to the miracle that happened centuries ago when God miraculously parted the Red Sea, allowing Moses and the children of Israel to cross on dry land. In this case, the waters of the Jordan divided, allowing Elijah and Elisha to cross the river on dry land. Then Elijah turns to his friend and asks, "What can I do for you before I go, before the Lord takes me from this land?" 2 Kings 2, verse 11. As they continued walking and talking, behold, a chariot of fire with horses of fire appeared suddenly and separated the two, and Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind. This is fantastic. They were walking together and talking. Elijah was not preaching or prophesying at that moment. They were just two close friends walking and talking together. This must have been an incredible moment. 2 Kings 2, verses 12 to 15. Elisha saw it and cried, my father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen." And he saw him no more. Then he took hold of his own clothes and tore them in two pieces in mourning. He took up the cloak of Elijah that had fallen from him and went back and stood on the bank of the Jordan. He took the cloak of Elijah that had fallen from him and struck the waters, saying, "Where is the Lord, the God of Elijah?" And when he had struck the waters, they parted to one side and to the other, and Elisha crossed over. When the sons of the prophets who were in Jericho saw him at a distance, they declared, "The spirit of Elijah rests on Elisha." And they came to meet him and bowed to the ground before him, a sign of respect. Elijah's deathless covenant came into effect suddenly. Nothing of God dies when a man or woman of God dies. We tend to forget this. Elisha is a prime example, and God always has a plan. Consider this. He had his men and women in every era to continue his work throughout the centuries. God never became frustrated, wondering what his children would do now that he was gone, now that he is no longer with them. Our Creator God is almighty and never runs out of resources. Elisha was surprised and astonished for a brief moment, but it didn't last long. He bent down and took the prophet's cloak, remembering Elijah's words. He crossed the Jordan again, claiming the power that was now his, and began his own prophetic ministry from that point forward. God's plan never failed. Elijah goes out, Elisha comes in. Number 2, Enoch. The first mention of Enoch is in Genesis chapter 5. There was an Enoch who was the son of Cain, and this is not the same Enoch. Genesis 5, verse 21. When Enoch had lived 65 years, he fathered Methuselah. And according to our biblical understanding, we know that his son, Methuselah, was the oldest man recorded in the scriptures. When we study the genealogies in the Bible, we find that Enoch was the great-grandfather of Noah, Jude 14. It was about these people that Enoch, in the 7th generation from Adam, prophesied when he said, "Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his holy ones." Jude says that Enoch warned about the Lord's impending judgment against them. Enoch was a man who walked with God amidst the moral decay in the days of Noah and spoke about the imminent judgment. In a time when most of his contemporaries had only the record of their birth and the children they also bore, Enoch is like a breath of fresh air. Enoch was introduced like others, but his testimony is striking. His description is short but dense and meaningful. It signifies something about his pure walk with God, which translated him. His life provided a model for many people across different generations, teaching us to live for an audience of one. He teaches us to passionately seek intimate communion and fellowship with God, knowing that by doing so, we will experience God in a new dimension. Genesis 5, verses 18 to 24. When Jared was 165 years old, he became the father of Enoch. Jared lived 800 years after Enoch's birth and had other sons and daughters. Thus, Jared lived 962 years and died. When Enoch was 65 years old, he became the father of Methuselah. Enoch walked in habitual communion with God for 300 years after Methuselah's birth and had other sons and daughters. Thus, all the days of Enoch were 365 years. In reverent fear and obedience, Enoch walked with God, and he was not found among men because God took him to be with him. Enoch's case was the first documented rapture, for God simply took him. Perhaps the communion was so intense that God's presence just enveloped and raptured him. The book of Hebrews speaks of the man for whom this world was not worthy. Hebrews 11, verses 5 and 6. By faith that pleased God, Enoch was taken up and brought to heaven, so that he would not see death. And he was not found because God had taken him, for even before he was taken to heaven, he received the still recorded testimony that he had walked with God and pleased him. But without faith, it is impossible to walk with God and please him. For anyone who approaches God must necessarily believe that God exists and that he rewards those who seek him with sincerity and diligence. It is a great comfort to know that God will always prepare sufficiently and abundantly for his own and watch over us tenderly until we flourish miraculously. Chronicles 16, verse 9. For the eyes of the Lord roam throughout the earth to support those whose heart is completely his. You acted foolishly in this. Therefore, from now on, you will have wars. While the Father pours his kindness upon us to see us grow, what he truly desires from us is an honest and unpretentious response to the love he gives us. But a time is coming, and is already here, when the true worshippers will worship the Father and the Spirit with heart and soul, and in truth, for the Father seeks such people to be his worshippers. God is Spirit, the source of life still invisible to humanity, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth. John 4, verses 23 and 24. God is always in search of faithful and loyal seeds who will live their lives entirely for him. These are the vessels through which he can truly use and manifest his glory. Enoch, according to the scriptures, did not share the fate of Adam and the rest of his descendants. He did not die. Enoch is used as an example of rapture in the New Testament. One goal of translating Enoch is to emphasize the truth of the scriptures, that there is a final redemption for all of us who place our faith in the Lord. Although the vast majority of believers will go through physical death, Enoch's example gives believers hope that, in the end, they will triumph over death. Number 3, Christians in the last days. Now we are entering the recorded prophecy. This is one that is yet to be fulfilled as written. Although many of us, if not all of us, since we do not know the exact time when Jesus will return, will experience the pains of death, Christians in the last days will undergo a rapture. It is also important to note that in Thessalonians 4, verses 13 to 18, both the Christians who died previously and those who are still alive will participate in this event together. Thessalonians 4, verses 13 to 18. Now we do not want you, believers, to be uninformed about those who are asleep in death, so that you do not grieve as the others who have no hope beyond this present life. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, as indeed happened, so also in the same way, God, by raising them from the dead, will bring with him those believers who have slept in Jesus. For we tell you this by the word of the Lord, that we, the living, those who remain until the coming of the Lord, will not precede those who sleep in death. For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a commanding voice, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trumpet call of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we, the living who remain on earth, will be caught up together with them, the resurrected in the clouds, to meet the Lord in the air. And so we will always be with the Lord. Therefore, console and encourage one another with these words about our reunion with the believers who have died. Thus, in both cases, we will experience the rapture. At that time, like Enoch, Christians will be caught up in the air. Therefore, one of the reasons for translating Enoch is that he foreshadows an entire generation of believers who will not taste death.